Hey everybody, welcome back to Andertons TV, and I have got the pleasure of having Ola Strandberg with me today. It's also his birthday today. I mean, apparently, rumour has it that when Ola his wife said, "What do you want for your birthday?" He said, "What I really want is to be on Andertons TV on my birthday." So, hey,
that's it. We've
made the dream come true. We met actually for the first time earlier this year. I've been a long-time admirer of the guitars that you design, and I was really intrigued to meet you and understand what the inspiration behind the designs were. I think, I said before, truly it's probably the only brand that has genuinely tried to shift the design of the electric guitar down a different path in the last 20 years, maybe the last 70 years, I don't know.
Yeah.
But look, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for making my dream come true. And
yeah, we should have got you a cake. I apologise about that. But look, I'm interested. I'm always interested. I never got to meet a Leo Fender or a Ted McCarthy or anything like that. I've met Paul Reed Smith a few times. I always think there's something interesting about people that genuinely design guitars that are different and go on to be successful. And I don't think anybody can deny that your guitars are different and you have had success. But take us back, I mean, where's your, growing up, were you a fan of the guitar or an engineering fan, or what was life like? What were your first sort of introductions to guitar?
Growing up was under pretty small circumstances. So if I wanted something, the easiest way to get it was to make it myself. So that kind of thing came naturally to me. My dad built reel-to-reel tape recorders.
Okay.
Like by hand as craftsmanship. He assembled like kit hi-fi amps and stuff. So there was always soldering irons and tools and stuff laying around my house. So he was also a drummer. Apparently I was conceived on tour in a tour bus. I don't know the legitimacy of that story, but
very romantic.
But so I played the drums when I was a kid. That was my thing. Lived in Umeå in the north of Sweden. And when we were about to move to Uppsala, where I live now, there was no room for my drum kit. And there was also no room for a massive aquarium that I had. And I traded that aquarium with the guitarist in my band for a guitar.
Okay.
I didn't know how to play at all. And I think, I was interested by the instrument. I was attracted to it. But I think I was probably equally attracted to trying to improve that guitar because it was a truly horrible guitar. I mean, nowadays you can buy a very affordable guitar that still works. But back then, so this was like 1979 or something. A cheap guitar was a horrible guitar. That was pretty natural to me to like start messing with that guitar, try to understand how it worked. A few years later in school, I did study engineering, mechanical engineering. And one of my teachers was a very prominent builder of nyckelharpa, which is it's like a bowed instrument that also has 12 self-resonating strings underneath. And you play it with keys and a bow. So it's like a folk music instrument. So I saw the opportunity of like borrowing some of his woodworking mindset, and there's actually very few specialty tools required to build a guitar. But I did make friends with a local guitar builder, and he lent me a fret crowning file, which was the only specialty tool that I used. And I bought a book called Build Your Own Electric Guitar by Melvin Hiscock, who sadly passed away, but his book is legendary. Yeah, it was kind of natural to me to try and build my own guitar. So this was in my early teens. I built probably a handful of instruments.
I think that's fascinating. And again, half of me just thinks our generation, or maybe maybe I'm a little bit younger than you, but I sort of feel, certainly my father's generation, the idea of building something that you needed seems so natural and so much more common than nowadays. Who are you? I mean, you say, we could go so off topic here, by the way, because I used to keep fish as well. I've just sold an enormous aquarium to a moving house. So did you use salt water or tropical?
It was sweet water. Yeah.
Salt water.
No.
It's a tropical.
Fresh water. Yeah.
Oh, fresh water. Yes. Sorry. Okay. Fine.
Yeah. Don't know the terminology.
Another conversation for another day. And yes, my father was a drummer, and and my brother's drummer and grandfather's drummer, and actually I was so sick of the sound of drums by the time it came for me to choose a musical instrument. I was like, there was no way I was going down the sort of drum route. But who were you listening to? Or was that, it's always interesting, I think. It's like, was your passion for the guitar driven through the music you were listening to, or through the engineering challenge of just making something? I
loved guitar music. I think from when I became aware of music at all. I think my first recollection of music was Santana. We had, Pink Floyd albums and stuff laying around my house. The band I was in back when I played the drums, so this was like when I was 12 years old, was Nazareth. Okay. Razam and Naz.
Excellent. Sounds like a progressive rock jazz band or something like that at 12.
But then I had massive Bob Dylan periods. Pink Floyd was probably my biggest ever influence. I painted the wall graphic on my literal wall in my bedroom.
Amazing.
In my early teens. So like one of my transformative experiences was I walked into the local music store and they played Jeff Beck, There and Back. That was what really set me like on the path of guitar music. Alan Holdsworth was my musical god for many years, even when I didn't play the guitar very much myself.
He would undoubtedly have played a Strandberg guitar.
Yeah, and I did end up making him one.
You did?
Yes.
Wow,
sure.
Because I feel like I need to revisit the Holdsworth journey, because I think when I first started at Andertons, the main guitar salesman here was very good friends with Alan Holdsworth. So I got introduced to Holdsworth's music way before I was ready for it. It's just like, so I need to revisit, but I have recollections of always seeing him playing a very unusual looking guitar, almost reminiscent of what you've built here. So
yeah, he was early in the headless game for sure, and I think for him it was truly about squeezing anything you could out of the instrument.
I think I met him, I'd have been like 17 or something at the time, so it's a long time ago. Stories I've heard about Alan was that he could never be happy, because he always thought anything he played that it could be better, could have achieved more, which when you listen to what he's playing is like, what else is there? Yeah. If you built a guitar for him, did you get to spend much time with him?
Not much. Right. We met a few times. I saw him play live several times growing up. He fortunately passed through Sweden a few times. I saw him in the States. And then we have a very nice guitar festival in Uppsala, which is called Uppsala Guitar Festival. And he and Guthrie Govan was playing the same year, actually. So that was my first opportunity to actually show him a guitar. It had the True Temperament fretting system. And it was a very weird guitar, I think, that I'd built out of like scrap wood. So it was very unusual material combinations, but it just worked. That guitar was like alive. So I managed to corner both him and Guthrie on like separate occasions, but during the festival. And he was like, I don't mind it at all. which is probably the highest praise you'll ever get. So this was in October, so I built the guitar for him on like record speed. I just picked his brain on like the key components that I was kind of aware of, having read up on him, which was like his pickup and the spacing between the bridge and the pickup itself. Just made sure I had those key things nailed down, but otherwise it was just a Strandberg guitar, and it was with the True Temperament frets.
Right. So this is after this is before you've started Strandberg in the way we know it now, or this is after you've...
No, this was, I'm pretty sure it was 2012.
Right.
So I'd been doing it a few years. I was probably up in the, I want to say 25 to 30 in terms of serial number. Right. So I was
still just you building
way.
guitars then?
In
no
my
sense
garage,
of,
yeah.
Right. Maybe we'll revisit some of your memories, because I'm always fascinated as to who would you have loved, or who do you still think I would love to get one of my guitars in this player's hands. But it's a huge leap from making a guitar that's a pet project for 6 months and then going, I think there's a business here.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
It truly started as like a personal distraction after a very intense and crazy period working abroad. We moved back to Sweden. I got a job with like normal working hours. So I had like a whole work week left in my body at that time.
Sorry to interrupt, but your career had been in what though prior?
In software.
Right, software design. Okay.
So yeah, and I had roles like in chief technology officer, technical director type stuff, but all about like innovation on the software side. But I drifted into more product management, marketing, stuff like that. So completely different from guitars. But
I can see why doing something with your hands and more tactile was probably a mental release, just away from sort of a high pressure software and orientated role.
Yeah, for sure. So I just come out of a period of like literally being on sick leave from like burnout, and I was trying to think of a way to engage with my hands and get my mind off things. I remember back to those handful of guitars that I built when I was younger, and just thought, I'm going to build myself another guitar. And I had owned Hohner Steinberger licensed headless guitar, which from being a mechanical engineer, I just enjoyed the design and the features of that Steinberger system. And I had taken that hardware off the Hohner and built my own neck and body for that guitar.
The square body or the regular?
The original one had the square body. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So I built this like a Strat style body for that guitar. I started looking around for headless hardware to purchase, and I found out that there wasn't anything commercially available. And I stumbled on this community called buildingtheergonomicguitar.com, and that was a community of builders who were trying to innovate and do something different outside of the norm. That just resonated with me to try and solve a problem. So I really approached it more from the industrial design perspective than a guitar building perspective. And coming from like innovation, product management perspective, even though it was just a personal project, I dreamed up the ergonomic guitar system. And I had read in the local paper, so this was 2007. I'd read in the local paper about this phenomena called blogging. So, right. I mean, I was roughly 40 at the time, so I guess it was like my midlife crisis. Yeah. So the guys in Stockholm, they grew beard and did sourdoughs, and I started making a guitar.
I mean, how far is a current Strandberg guitar from that early design that you came up with?
A lot of it was actually there almost from the start. So I started messing with the hardware components. So I was then director of software at a biotech company that so I did the software, but there was also a hardware branch. So I talked to the director of hardware and asked if I could borrow the workshop. So I immediately got started like machining my own hardware pieces. But then I basically sketched everything out on paper and cardboards. So the concept was actually not very far from what we see today. But I was distracted by the hardware being the only commercially available hardware on the market. And people reaching out to me from this Guitar Builders forum where I was active. When I posted pictures of what I was developing and I was writing my blog, they contacted me about buying the hardware. So I started making it, selling it to other builders. And I mean, they became like pen pals. And I would send them the hardware, they would send me pictures of the completed guitars. It's just a lot of fun.
Let's look at I mean, for me, and forgive me if there are more elements that go into this, but I look at Strandberg and I go, the hardware is obviously of your own design and very different to, you know, how you might put a set of tuning pegs up here and a tremolo, you know, a Strat trem down here. The body shape is obviously a very different design to what we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, arguably the most radical thing is the neck carve, which is completely unique. But if we just go back to the hardware, I guess when I look at guitars that I have that I sort of almost look forward to restringing, they're the easy ones, right? It's just like, in it goes, tune it up, boom.
Yep.
And I'm still a huge fan of that original vintage Fender tuning peg where you poke the string in and then, you know. But what have you know, what was in your mind when, you know, what do you, and did the hardtail come first and the tremolo later, or was the trem first?
The trem was actually first.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go back to that one.
Yeah, because in my mind, I wasn't that much of a player. I mean, I enjoyed playing the guitar. I don't think I'm alone in thinking like, why would you want a hardtail? The trem is much more versatile. You can always block it if you don't want it. When I dreamed up this ergonomic guitar system, I mean, yes, I wanted a playable guitar, but I didn't really have a notion of what that meant. I wanted to solve the problem of having an ergonomic guitar that was attractive and that I would want to own. So I started thinking about, like, how can I reduce weight and still make the guitar balance? How can I allow the player to change the playing position during long practice sessions, etc. So those were the things that I was like trying to address. When looking at the hardware, I knew that would be a big like weight reduction if I could just design that correctly. And then in terms of like having it made, I just had to reduce the complexity of it and the number of components that I would have to like source in from somewhere else. So it's gotten slightly less modular over the years, since now we have a standardized set of models, so we don't need all the flexibility. But the string locks used to be individual modules.
Right.
So 6-string guitars, you would put 6 of them there. 7-string guitar, you would put 7 of them. Throughout, you know, different relationships of the multiscale, you just stack them differently. But when designing the hardware, it was clearly, I mean, and intentionally as minimalist as it could be. So the fewest number of parts imaginable. And the ergonomic guitar system that I dreamt up came in like 3 levels. One was you would replace the hardware of your existing guitar to make it more lightweight. So I designed a trem that had like a Floyd Rose pole spacing or post spacing. Yeah. It would mean that you would have to carve out a portion of your guitar to access the tuners, but otherwise you could just drop in an existing Floyd Rose compatible guitar. Same dimension of the trem spring block, and the knife edge was, you could flip it over. So if it got worn out, you could flip it over. Yeah, trem was first. I was messing with bearings instead of knife edge. So on
what
and
is
so
what is
forth.
what is the final design? Is it knife edge or bearings?
It's currently knife edge.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we the bearings were nice, but yeah, they had their own can of worms.
Because you can't really see that as such on this. So you're saying underneath here is a knife edge, I suppose, that's mounted to the guitar, and then the trem thing sort of sits over like that and just
Correct. Yeah. So it's reversed
Yeah.
from most designs. So
Yeah.
the knife edge is on the post, and then there's like a small
Oh,
insert.
I see. Okay. Interesting.
And the insert has 2 notches, and originally, actually not on the production ones currently, but originally that insert could also be flipped around, so you could get a different feel.
Oh,
of
like
the
a,
tram.
I see.
Now there's 2 notches, so you can kind of get a different feel. But then, yeah, it was all about durability and the possibility to maintain it over time.
And I guess up here is your version of a locking nut, isn't it? It's not hugely. The technology is basically you're just clamping the strings in place, right? With the nut itself.
Yeah, I mean the Steinberg system is so user friendly because you just have the double ball end strings.
Yeah.
You drop them in and you tune up and you're ready to go. But then you need special strings.
Double ball end
so
strings.
that the other like design requirement I set was to use as many off the shelf standard parts as possible. And I mean, throughout the journey, I didn't think of it consciously back then, but I guess subconsciously I knew that I didn't want too many like proprietary technical solutions. We've seen very, innovative brands come up with great ideas, but they can't keep up just the complexity of manufacturing a lot of these things becomes too much for companies, and they change ownership, and they go under because there's too many like proprietary things.
And I know from one of the companies I'm involved with that have looked at designing hardware, when you actually get down to when you start talking to factories, and let's say you have 12 elements of a and they're going, well, it's 12 different sets of tooling to, before you know it, you've done $100,000 just designing tooling for something,
and something will go wrong with each one of those 12 over a period of time.
So you can see why in a very niche market like the guitar market, where the sales revenues are always going to be relatively small, it's tough to you can't just drive innovation. You have to be practical about what you're going to try and design.
What made it work for me was, I think, I wasn't trying. It was my dream to become a guitar builder. It was my dream to be a commercial success. It was for my personal mental like enjoyment. And I had a day job. I had food on the table regardless of what went wrong. So I could take these chances, and if something didn't work, I could just start over, which was fine. I was always very careful of not over-promising. I never took deposits from a lot of people like that would weigh me down, because then I'm sure I would have taken a lot of different decisions during the development. And this was like entirely self-funded, so whatever money that I made from this stuff was just reinvested in new tools and new machines and stuff.
How many years do you think it was in that phase of it just being you working? I mean, I think you said by the time you made Alan Holdsworth a guitar, you were at like number 25 or whatever. How many years was it from number 1 through to the point where you were able to do your first deal with a factory and go, could you make me 200 of these, please, or whatever?
So the idea was Christmas break, 2007-8. Late 2009 or early 10, I built the first guitar that had most of these features. 2012, I started thinking that maybe this is a business after all. I founded like a proper company, and at that time I was starting to realize that I can't do this myself in my garage. Standing in my garage, building them was not exactly, I mean, that was not my passion. My passion was about innovating and learning new things. So even learning how to do bookkeeping for the company, I'm not going to call it fun, but you know, something mentally
like a masochist
interesting. I learned to do product photography because I had photographed the guitars. I set up a website because I didn't have time to spend on answering people's questions. What would this build cost? What would that build cost? So I made a public price list, which was like unthinkable at the time. I set up an online store to buy the hardware because I didn't have time to mess with that. All those things were equally rewarding to standing in my garage. I very early on bought a CNC machine and figured out how to use that. And all those things were like enjoyable pieces on the journey. So it was pretty easy for me to start outsourcing the building aspects. So I would maintain the dialogue, but then I would offload the actual work more and more. I started doing that around 2012, 2013, just to be able to scale up, because I had like 500 people on my wait list. And I was building 5 guitars a year. So
that's okay if you can charge $100,000 a guitar, but
I couldn't at that time, for sure. Late 2014 was the first mass-produced batch of guitars. That was called the Boden OS line, built at WMI in Korea, which came about by introduction of a very highly positioned guy from Ibanez, or Hoshino, who had bought a guitar, just didn't introduce himself as like an Ibanez executive, but he believed in the concept, and he made the introduction as a way of, like, he thought Strandberg deserved to be a bigger brand.
Who was it my one at WMI at that time?
He was at the time.
He was one of a kind.
Yeah.
Like this, you would see this guy at the NAMM show, and I don't know what, he must have even been in his 60s then. And he'd have his like studded boots, leather trousers, diamond encrusted. I mean, like the least 60-year-old Korean guy you can imagine walking towards you. But he believed in all these crazy ideas, I think, didn't he? And tried to help. Yeah. I miss him. I don't think he's passed away or anything like that, but he's certainly not been at WMI for 10 years or so.
No,
but, lovely guy.
Yeah. Give or take, it's 10 years ago now since we had like mass production started. And I guess like 7 years leading up to that. And
was Hannah involved already at this point? This is Mrs. Strandberg, by the way, or?
No, that came a little bit later. I guess she was involved to the extent that she managed the ground service.
Right, yeah.
When I was in the garage. But yeah, so I still had my day job.
You see, still, even at the point where you're doing that first production run.
Yep.
I think these are amazing stories of how families come together and just get this stuff off the ground, because it's just, I don't know, it's real world stuff. It's hard. Yeah. It's hard, and it needs passion, and it needs support, and the journey is so interesting to just, you know.
I'd had a brief period of like, I took 1 day a week off from the day job. The last 6 months, which was like in the spring of 2015, I left the day job, and the 6 months before that, I had worked 50%. So I started scaling it down, and then Hannah, my wife, she joined me later in the summer 2015, and she was running like everything that had to do with operations of the company since then, and until not too long ago.
when you first explained to me the Strandberg, the ergonomic element of it, and we've talked a lot about the tremolo system, and actually to an extent, I almost feel like that's probably technically the most difficult bit to build, but actually it's not the most significant ergonomic part of the design. For me, now you've got a body shape here. Everybody's going to have a view about whether aesthetically it looks nice or not. We're very lucky, and we're going to talk about these J Artisan guitars around us before. These are some of the most beautiful guitars I've ever seen. The body shape is striking and it's not traditional, but it has three incredibly important elements. So one is it's just very lightweight, you know. But look at this. I mean, you might have seen this before with Strandberg. It's so simple, right? There's a playing position. There's a playing position. It's like, what a brilliant idea. I mean, I suppose you're not the first person perhaps to come up with this playing position. That's pretty traditional,
yeah, that's
right?
a traditional one.
But that's such a genius playing position. And look at what it does to my posture. That's what I found when I first played. You know, I have, like most blokes of a certain age, you know, wake up with bad shoulders and bad back and everything, and you go to see the physiotherapist or the osteopath, and they're like, oh yeah, you've got this crooked, your hips are crooked like that, and a lot of it is just if you work at a desk, you know. But 100% playing guitar, you know, I've had situations where I can only play standing up with a strap because my back is too painful to play. And then you sit like this, and all of a sudden you've gone, I'm sitting up straight.
Yeah.
I will never get a bad back playing guitar like this. It's like, so thank you for for this, because I mean that is hugely important in the design.
Yeah, and also the other thing is, I mean, nowadays a lot of people don't spend a lot of time in a room like this with a wall of amps. They'll sit at their desk and play, and it's probably a gaming chair with armrests. And suddenly, you can actually sit at your desk with the guitar, and it's not going to bump into the armrests, and you can lean over it and mess with your keyboard. So that's
so practical. I still want to B/. I still want to learn. I still want to play the guitar down here.
Yeah.
But you're right. If I'm practicing, actually, this is incredibly comfortable.
Yeah.
Obviously, I guess it's pretty impossible to sort of copyright or trademark a body shape like this. So you know.
In the US, you can.
Oh, really?
And it has been, yeah.
Oh, congratulations. But the real talking point, and my first ever introduction to a Strandberg was actually that Boss collaboration that you did maybe, I don't know, was that 6 or 7 years ago now, maybe?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
And somebody hands me this guitar, and I feel the neck, and I'm like, what have you done? It's like, so again, let me hand this to you so that you can kind of, but if you can show it to camera as well, because you know, it's a three-sided, well, four-sided if you include the fretboard, but like a three-sided angular neck. So, which shit moves as you go down. But please tell me, because I find this fascinating, and it was the bit I thought I would hate the most, but actually you end up going, it might be the bit I like the most in the end.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I got sidetracked from level one of the ergonomic guitar system was the hardware. So you could convert an existing guitar. So I had like studs you could put on the headstock of a traditional guitar. You just remove like a pound of tuning machines and replace them with these locking pegs. Level 2 of the ergonomic guitar system was this innovation that I had seen a bass builder called Jerome Little. He called it the torsal twist. Bass neck. So the neck would actually twist as you extended your arm, you could play with a straighter wrist. So I realized that it would make you have to adjust your playing technique, etc. But yeah, still very cool ergonomic innovation. So level 2 was I was going to make like these twisted necks with a standard Strat size heel so you could replace your neck of the guitar. That later turned out to be just a nightmare to produce, and I gave up. I was too lazy. What I realized after messing with just a trapezoidal profile, which seemed to kind of give more stable surfaces to press against, to be more relaxing to just the muscles in your hand. But I realized that if I shifted this sideways in one direction down here and the other direction up here, that this basically does the same as that twisted neck. It encourages you and guides you into straightening your wrist out here, and it gives room back here for this joint if you're playing the chords. Mm-hmm. And as you come up the neck, it is easier to reach the upper frets. So there's no need to think about, oh, I need to keep my thumb on the flat surface in the back. A lot of people actually rest their thumb at the bottom part of the profile, as they're doing certain kinds of playing. Other times you rest up here. A lot of players actually do still wrap their thumb around. There's nothing preventing you from wrapping your thumb around. It keeps you on track, if you will, with the straighter wrist. Less tension on muscles and joints and tendons, and
it's really interesting how the thumb. You must. I think it's very easy because of the way the guitar community adopted Strandberg and it was typically a younger, more technical kind of player. I think my perception of Strandberg before I actually played one was like, well, that's not for me then, is it? Because I'm not one of these, I'm not a Pliny style guitar player. And what I think's been most gratifying introducing this to Andertons and to customers, a much more diverse audience of customers, every guitar player who has picked it up does actually get the ergonomic bit. They might not. They might not like the aesthetics, and that's fine.
Yeah.
If you're a dyed-in-the-wool, if it doesn't look like a Les Paul, I don't like it, and that's fine. But nobody's picked it up and gone, it doesn't work. Everybody's gone, oh, right, yeah, I get it. And we've sold these to such a cross section of guitar players. There's loads of blues dads sitting on their sofas with a Strandberg they bought now. Yeah, just the same as there are Plinies out there doing crazy stuff on it. I've never had like a repetitive strain injury on I probably don't play enough, but I get it is uncomfortable on a regular rounded neck to maintain the thumb position in the best place to play, and comfortable if you're doing it over a long period of time. In a way that on the Strandberg you do seem to have addressed that with this Endura neck design. So I love it. Do you think Do you think had you not been Swedish that this would never have happened? Is this some sort of built-in Swedish design thing that you do guitars and flat-pack furniture better than anyone else in the world?
I think there's an element of that.
I bet there is.
Yeah, because Sweden is such a small market that for something to like make it, it has to be good in a way. There are other like huge markets with huge populations where you can just put anything out there, and there's enough people who will latch onto it and think it's a good idea. But I think on the idea side, Swedish design and innovation has like a high innovativeness per capita. And just growing up in that, I assume it must have had some kind of effect.
So we've talked about 3 of the 4 main elements of a guitar. We've talked about the neck, we've talked about the body, we've talked about the bridge. We haven't talked about the pickups, and you've never gone there in terms of, or at least as far as I'm aware, I've never seen a Strandberg guitar with your own design on there. Is that because you don't feel that there's not an ergonomic angle to improving a pickup, or it's just that's 2027 is when you start looking at that?
I mean, now we're beyond just improving ergonomics. I mean, for a long time, we've been about improving the instrument, or rather meeting various customers' needs. It started as a custom brand and build to order, etc. And a lot of discussions with people about what their specific needs were. So I would have like the general body shape, the hardware, that was like set, but everything else you could change. So, and I didn't have any experience myself of like being on stage and how does this pickup react? Is this going to cut through the mix? So on. I wasn't even aware of those things other than maybe subconsciously. So discussing each build with someone who was much more experienced than myself was just a learning journey for me to understand. They could translate their knowledge into what they were asking me to build. I would do it and then try it and then sort of absorb that knowledge. We've had our own strings, for example, but like Strandberg branded strings. They're made by GHS and by D'Addario, and they were custom gauges that would balance well on our multi-scale 7 and 8 strings. But on a 6-string guitar, we don't really have anything to contribute. There's tons of sets of 6-string that you can buy. Pickups, tons of good pickups out there. Very subjective in terms of the player's preferences. We just made sure to make like standard size cavities and use standard dimensions and standard ways of attaching them to the guitar. I would encourage anyone to look beyond the pickups when they purchase a guitar. They're like the final piece that would just pick up the vibrations and send them on in the signal chain. We haven't had too much to contribute on the pickup side. We did develop our own pickups with a legend in the business called Michael Frank, who sadly passed away a few years ago in an accident. And he was a one-man show, so the intention was for him to like build them for a while and then teach someone else to mass produce them, and we never got to that stage. So we're back to square one. We will be unveiling some things in the not too distant future.
I get some secret out of you.
But yeah, I think in general, whatever, when it comes to, accessories or signal chains, or if we don't have anything like specific to contribute with like a Strandberg brand promise, if you will, then we don't try, because there are so many companies out there that do it well already. There
is something that I think it could be argued is an ergonomic improvement that you're going to start offering next year, isn't it? Which is True Temperament frets. I mean, frets-wise, obviously we've not even mentioned that these are fan fret guitars. I think because the scale length is relatively conventional, you'd be forgiven for not even really noticing that there's a fan fret. When you see an 8-string with a much longer scale length, the angle of the frets become quite extreme, whereas on this, it's not hugely extreme, so it doesn't feel or look terribly odd. But True Temperament frets, and we'll put a picture of a neck with some True Temperament frets on screen now. You can't miss those. I'm going to ask you, just, you as a designer now, should every guitar really have True Temperament frets on it? What makes designing guitars interesting and challenging is that there's very few objective betters in this business. I mean, there are many guitar heroes out there whose guitars would be unplayable to most people. Super high action, heavy gauge strings, all beat up. And that's part of their artistic expression. I mean, that's what makes them who they are. And part of their sound is like having to dig in. And if you look at some of the like videos that are out there comparing True Temperament to conventional frets, some people will say that, well, the imperfections of a guitar is what makes it a guitar. And True Temperament removes a lot of those imperfections. So as you play chords in various keys, there's much less, cancellations of frequencies and weird things that go on with a conventional guitar. Some frequencies will like exaggerate each other and amplify them, and others will be canceled out. And that disappears with True Temperament. So in general, I think of it as a guitar that just rings louder and more clear. I don't think of it as more in tune because I probably don't have the ears for it. And in that respect,
I think it is ergonomics to the ears. It removes some of the tensions in the music. But is it better? It's different. I mean, there's a whole rabbit hole with tone woods, and can you really notice if it's this wood or that wood, and why pay for this exotic piece, etc. And I don't think what like comes out of the speaker, if the listener can hear that or not, if the player can feel it, that's what matters. Because if I'm inspired by playing an instrument and how it resonates against my body, and the tactile feeling of the neck and the body, and how they interact with my body, that's what makes me play better or worse or more inspired. And the audience they're going to hear that. And I think True Temperament can do that to you as a player. It's just different, and it might make you perform better.
I forget the chap's name, but I interviewed him at Guitar Summit. He's a Strandberg user with True Temperament.
Per Nilsson.
That's it. Mm-hmm. And I had a little play on his guitar, and for me, I look at these frets and go, well, surely I'm a vibrato guy, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at this sort of going, surely it's going to go, it's like, it doesn't at all. It's another one of those weird. It's a bit like how I felt when I first tried fan fret. It looks like it's going to radically change how I've got to approach the guitar, and then you start playing it and you realise it doesn't at all. It just is. Mm-hmm. You just play like you normally would, which freaked me out a bit with those frets, because it makes no sense as to why the pitch isn't doing weird things if you're doing vibrato on it, but it doesn't. Or string bends you think would be weird, but it isn't. So that was, I think and honestly, you and I are so on the same page with regards to what can the audience hear and what can't the audience hear. I think this is such a ridiculous debate. It's like, the audience probably couldn't hear whether you were playing a spade versus a ukulele. It's like, as long as you play the right chords and the singer sings the right words, it's like, that's what the audience hears.
Yeah, you're going to feel stupid standing on stage with a spade and probably be all self-conscious. Yeah. But if you have a beautiful guitar with tone woods that you think are amazing, or just something that looks like this, if this is what floats your boat, you're going to play better.
Do you know what as well? I think the worst thing the guitar industry ever did to fuel this debate was come up with the word tone wood. Yeah. Because I do get the root of what pisses people off, customers off, was this 1980s, 1990s marketing thing from the guitar industry that more expensive wood sounded better. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I just think if we'd have never gone down that, because that is marketing BS really. Yeah. Do certain woods sound different? I do believe that. And they do. Different woods kind of, every component.
Then there's, 1950s technology in the signal chain can mask out those differences. Yeah. But they do sound.
But a guitar made of very cheap wood, there's nothing to say that by using an expensive wood that it sounds better.
No.
It just looks, I think most of the time, and do you know what, this is a great segue into talking about these J Artisan guitars really. Because I think, the Strandberg range, I think you'd said up until J Artisan was function over form maybe. It was designed almost to not matter what materials you made it from, as long as it ticked those kind of functional boxes. And then J Artisan was very much just, can we just make some crazy beautiful looking guitars as well? So tell me how, this is J Artisan, I think you were saying is something like 100 guitars a year or less?
12 batches of 10 pieces each. And similar specs in those batches, but some color variations, fretboard materials variations. But batches of 10, one per month. So we just concluded the 12th run. So J Artisan has been
But very small group of Japanese luthiers that are making these. Are there any commonalities between, or is each batch like another take on the kind of timbers that you would use?
There's been a few varieties. There hasn't been 12 completely different batches. There have been some permutations woods used, but a lot of it is about the finishes. And a lot of people will know Nick Sugimoto, an absolute legend in the industry. He built guitars for Kiss, for ABBA, Fredrik Tordendahl's original signature guitar, and they've been finished by him personally.
I have been promising myself now for about 10 years, so I must just get round to doing it. I want one of these. I am fascinated with these highly distressed pieces of, this is some sort of burl, poplar burl.
Yeah, and that's all natural. But it's defective wood.
So, and I've seen stuff that gets dragged out of a swamp and has been in there for 500 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, of course, where the wood is so damaged and diseased and distressed, that then gets filled in with a resin or some other. I've seen it done.
Yeah, it's not even tone wood.
Exactly. Well, I tell you what is interesting though is this is like 25% heavier than an all wood one. So obviously the resin itself obviously is adding probably the bulk of the weight there. And if you pick that brown one up as well, it's just don't they look fantastic, and the uniqueness.
Yeah, this one is stunning.
So I've probably told this story on YouTube before, but I saw somebody make a table where they filled it with molten brass, and then they planed it all down and polished it, and I was like, I'm guessing I'd end up with some sort of 25-pound guitar that I wouldn't even be able to lift up. But I think these look fabulous, and again, they're completely unique. You've then got some slightly more, I was going to say conventional, but there's not a lot conventional about that, is there? But obviously this is just a piece of spalted maple by the looks of things. But it's stunning, and you get that sort of Rorschach shapes and stuff coming out on the top where you're sort of going, oh, what do you see there? Oh, I see an old man's face, and the next person sees a butterfly or whatever. And then you know if someone's a mass murderer or not by what they see on the front of their Strandberg guitar. But so these are beautiful, and we've got some of these in Andertons now. Ola's come down to do an evening with some customers here tonight, and we're going to keep these guitars here for a few days afterwards and see if anyone wants one. Is J Artisan, do you think that's going to become you're pretty committed to those sort of, 10 a month all the time, people still want to buy them?
We have some plans for the next year. It won't be billed as J Artisan per se, because that has been limited to these batches of instruments. But it'll be, it's the same people who will be building them. But I honestly don't know what we decided to call it.
Right.
But yeah, it is. It's a collaboration that we've really enjoyed doing. We've been big in Japan from very early on. I think a lot of things about the Strandberg brand resonated very well with the Japanese mindset, and the fact that there's a reason for every curve and feature, etc. is something that sits well with them. And I think anyone who knows the Japanese market knows that it functions very differently, and that's also the other thing with some of these guitars, that there are stockpiles of wood that is not available anywhere else in the world. And they have Brazilian rosewood that's been stacked there since long before the CITES regulations, etc., etc. So there's some legendary pieces of wood in these batches of guitar as well. It goes against like the Strandberg ethos to some extent, because you said we make functional guitars, and we think a lot about sustainability as well, and try and reduce whatever materials we choose. We make sure that we get a good yield, so we don't get tear outs and splinters, so we have to throw stuff away. So we've chosen materials that contribute to the function of the instrument and that minimize the damage on the planet. And these blingier guitar with exotic tone woods, they're a little bit counter to that. But again, these are like from limited stockpiles of wood that has been around for decades and is just sitting there waiting to be put to good use. So why not make beautiful guitars?
I don't think you're doing too much damage making 10 guitars a month. These are fabulous. What have you got over your shoulder there? I just want to sort of, I mean, again,
there's a few more.
If you're looking at these guitars thinking, wow, then links below, diving over to the Andertons website because we photographed them all. Oh my word.
This one's not too bad.
That's like, I see like a sci-fi movie like Dune. I sort of feel like that was the guitar made on that planet.
Yeah. This is a 7-string as well. So there's been a mix of 6/7 hardtail tremolo bridge across the 12 batches. Yeah, it's
so pretty.
It's another epoxy burl. It's just more color match rather than contrasting as on the other ones.
And what's is the last one a more conventional?
The slightly more conventional burst with the natural binding where the burl also shows through.
And then you've got is this Wenge, and what's the purple wood that's in here?
That is Purple Heart.
Purple Heart. So but the main neck is Wenge. Wenge, however you pronounce that.
Yep.
And then you've got a choice of by the looks of things, maple boards or that's not rosewood, is it?
There's been a variety. This looks like Siricoti. We've done some, Macassar ebony, pale moon ebony, bird's eye maple, flea maple.
They're so pretty. I mean, look,
selection.
There's almost something for everybody in the Strandberg price list. I mean, the Essential has been hugely popular. Brings the price down to sort of, around about the £1,000 mark. Nothing below that. And then you've got the core of the Strandberg range in that sort of up to maybe £2,000 or £3,000 mark. These are obviously quite a bit north of that. I won't spoil the surprise. You'll have to go to the Andertons website to see how much these are. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure we could talk a lot more, but we've got to go and set this event up for a start. I want to take the conversation back to the moment you made Alan Holdsworth a guitar. Who's out there still that you go, it's probably not the first time you've been asked this question, but who do you think would play your guitars that would make you feel completely validated? Like, as in, I know anybody that chooses to play a Strandberg guitar validates it to an extent.
Yeah.
Is there somebody that you just go, that would be the, that I'll retire that day and, that's it, life is complete?
My mind's racing trying to come up with a good name that can represent that.
I tell you what, they could be alive or dead. Because then at least if you choose someone who's dead, then it doesn't matter if they never actually do play it because they can't.
Good one.
Who would it be?
It's so hard. It is so cool now to start becoming a more mainstream brand. And I mean, doing something like this. And I mean, I have to pinch myself occasionally that it's happened and that we've grown to the size we are. And to some extent, we're changing people's lives for being ergonomic. We do get emails quite frequently about people coming back from injury. And I haven't been able to play guitar in 20 years, and now I can. Or I'm in a wheelchair from an accident, and now I can play again. I mean, those everyday stories, they mean a lot. Mm-hmm. And I mean, throughout the years building the company, you also said it earlier, I mean, it's a lot of work. And it's easy to get so absorbed into it. And then occasionally you get an opportunity to wind down and you meet someone who knows the industry. Because I've been too busy also to kind of pay attention to what's going on. It's not out of arrogance. It's out of just not having the mental capacity to absorb what's going on outside. But then when you do get an outside perspective that you've done something that makes a difference, that's incredibly rewarding. And seeing just normal people, not the superstars, playing, I think that's really important.
Have you dodged the question massively there, have you? I'll ask you a different one. Who's your favourite guitar player in the world? We'll just insert that as the answer. That's where the edit comes in, isn't it?
Yeah, honestly, you know, Per Nilsson, who you mentioned, he can bring me to tears almost any time he goes on stage. This is like my bullshit meter for good music is tears. And good music, regardless of genre, can move me to the point of tears. We were at a folk music concert, at the end of the pandemic. So everyone was like on edge. It was like the first time you were sitting in a big hall, and I was bawling like crazy. And the elderly woman on the side said, "Are you sick?" And I'm like, no, it's just acoustic music. But yeah, that's with so many incredible players on the Strandberg roster. Poe Hawk is another, I think, undervalued player. Anything he does, jaw-dropping.
Fair enough. I was just hoping you were going to say John Mayer, if I'm honest with you. But there we go. Another time, maybe.
I had a brief John Mayer period. I'll confess to that.
All right, look, Ola, happy birthday again. Thank you so much for thank you so much for giving up your birthday to come and speak to our customers tonight and shoot this video. It genuinely, it's been a pleasure for me, not only to get to know you a little bit better, but also to see your guitars for sailing in Andertons. I think that's, you know, they've been amazing, and I know many customers who've bought them, you know, feel similarly pleased that you've designed something like this. So anyway, Thank you so much. Thank you guys for tuning in and spending some time with us. And we shall see you in another video soon. Au revoir. How do you say goodbye in Swedish?
Hej då.